Hey y'all, happy Tuesday. First of all, let me make sure that you guys can. Okay, look, this is better. So, there we go. So, hey y'all, happy Tuesday. Hopefully your week is off to a really great start. I'm starting here a little late. I've been having some internet issues as I did last week that I would like to apologize for because the video was like trash. The audio was pretty good. But some of my new setup I'm still learning and tweaking and playing around with. So bear with me. All right. Hey to everybody coming in the room. Freedom by me, King BJ. Hey Darrell. Make sure you guys let me know as you come into the room. Also, if you would like one of these really dope hoodies, unicorns, fairy dust, and 8 or 15 type of girl, you can get those at my store at RhondaMary.com. Okay, so we're going to talk about a couple of things tonight. One thing that I want to mention and talk about because, I'm not really sure who is talking about this, and I think is really important. So I believe that this news broke today. Saudi Arabia is basically considering ditching the dollar for Chinese oil sales. So we're going to talk a little bit about this and why this is important and how this goes with the Russia and Ukraine thing. And then we're going to go right into talking about now you're going to see more people that are coming out, speaking up, or even questioning, okay, these official narratives are going to be bullied, ousted, name called, and things like that. And we're going to talk about how the line, between left and right is becoming every day increasingly blurry. And kind of losing its meaning, to be perfectly honest. So that's pretty much what we're going to talk about tonight. But let's go ahead and start by taking a look at this article on Yahoo. And hey to everybody coming in the room. Hey Edward. So this is gonna be really important, this continuing conflict with Russia and Ukraine. And why it's so much deeper is because a lot of people haven't really been paying attention to, or I should say, a lot of people in the mainstream media don't want to highlight our concerns with the connections that Joe Biden has had or may have not had with places like Ukraine and China, and how they are going to be impacting our dollar, the American dollar moving forward, and the position, how it's going to position us as far as being a world leader. And so this is really interesting when we start piecing it all together. So just bear with me and follow me here. So we're going to start here with this Yahoo article. Saudi Arabia considers ditching the dollar for Chinese oil sales. One of the core staples of the past 40 years and an anchor propping up the dollar's reserve status was a global financial system based on the petrodollar. This was a world in which oil producers would sell their products to the US and the rest of the world for dollars, which they would then recycle the proceeds of in dollar dominated assets while investing in dollar dominated markets, explicitly prop up the USD as the world reserve currency. All of this would support the standing of the US as the world's undisputed financial superpower. Those days are coming to an end. Note this, y'all, because I'm going to bring this back home in a second. Okay. One day after we reported that the UK is asking Saudis for more oil, even as MBS invites Xi Jinping to Radia, I don't know how to say these words, y'all, to strengthen ties, the WSJ is out with a blockbuster report noting that Saudi Arabia is in active talks with Beijing to price some of its oil sales to China in yuan a move that could cripple not only the petrodollar's dominance of the global petroleum market, something which Zoltan Pazar predicted in his last note, and mark another shift by the world's top crude exporter towards Asia, but also a move aimed squarely at the heart of the U.S. financial system, which has taken advantage of the dollar's reserve status by printing as many dollars as needed to fund government spending for the past decade. Okay, so basically what we're seeing happening here is this could potentially undermine, okay, the US dollar. And basically Saudi Arabia is just going to sell directly to China. So creating these powerhouses that are going to be almost competing with the US, possibly, where you have these Western countries competing with places like China, Saudi Arabia, Russia, as we're going to see. We're going to talk about, in a second, Africa and things like this. Okay. So if you didn't know, this is something that the media didn't really cover or go into depths about, which is kind of important. I would think something that we need to know. Well, if you didn't know, the Republic of China and Russia recently came out with a statement about them basically joining forces and doing whatever it takes to join forces as this powerhouse and this team and basically stand up to the West. Okay. So at the invitation, well, we're just gonna start down here because we're just basically gonna go into what they stated. The Russian Federation and the People's Republic of China, hereinafter referred to as Assad's state, as follow. Today, the world is going through momentous changes, and humanity is entering a new era of rapid development and profound transformation. It sees the development of such processes and phenomena as multipolarity, economic globalization, the advent of information society, cultural diversity, transformation of the global governance, architecture, and world order. There is increasing interrelation and interdependence between the states. So talking about China and Russia and how they're going to be working more in tangent going forward. A trend has emerged towards redistribution of power in the world. Basically, like the United States, y'all not going to be running over us no more. Like, we not with that. We're finally going to stand up for ourselves. We're going to make these our own alliances, and we're going to compete. Okay. So, and the international community is showing a growing demand from the leadership aiming at peaceful and gradual development. At the same time, as a pandemic of the new coronavirus infection continues, the international and regional security situation is complicating, and the number of global changes and threats is growing from day to day. Some actors representing but the minority of the international scale continue to advocate unilateral approaches to addressing international issues and resort to force. They interfere in the internal affairs of other states, infringing their legitimate rights and interests, and incite contradictions, differences, and confrontation, thus hampering the development and progress of mankind against the opposition from the international community. So they're obviously talking about the West. They're obviously talking about the United States, talking about basically how the United States instigates. They stick their nose where it doesn't need to be, right? And basically contradict and undermine what these sovereign countries, okay, or these legitimate countries want to do, okay, and basically the development and the direction that they want to take their countries. The sides call on all states to pursue well-being for all, and with these ends to build dialogue and mutual trust, strengthen mutual understanding, champion such universal human values as peace, development, equality, justice, democracy, freedom, respect the people's rights of independently determining the development paths of their countries and the sovereignty and the security and development interests of states to protect the United Nations driven international architecture and the international law based world order. Seek genuine multipolarity with the United Nations and its Security Council playing a central and coordinating role, promote more democratic international relations, and ensure peace, stability, and sustainable development across the world. So, this is a pretty lengthy document. I'm going to link this below if you guys want to read it. But they basically go on to say there is no one size fits all for democracy. Like, y'all basically need to stop telling us what democracy looks like for us. Stop interfering in our affairs. Stop poking your nose in our business. And we in Russia, China and Russia, we're going to strengthen these alliances. And they say in here, like, we're going to do whatever it takes. We're basically not going to allow you guys to stand in the way. And, almost in some ways, even you are poking your nose in our business is contradictory to the democracy that you pretend to support. So this just goes on and on to talk about this. Now, why I find this particularly interesting is because as we're going to talk about, some of these news personalities are trying to tell us it's more to the story. It's more to the story. This has been projected for a long time. The U.S. is almost, meddling and poking a bear in some ways. A lot of this has been hypothesized that these things were going to happen. And it's a lot of questionable things that are happening. And so when I read this, this just kind of, I'm like, yeah, okay. This is crazy. So this is according to the World Economic Forum. America's dominance is over by 2030. We'll have a handful of global powers. This is by the World Economic Forum. This was published in 2016, okay? The world's political landscape in 2030 will look considerably different to the present one. Nation states will remain essential players. There will be no single hegemonic force, but instead a handful of countries, the US, Russia, China, Germany, India, and Japan, chief among them, exhibiting semi-imperial tendencies. Power will be more widely distributed across non-state networks, including regressive ones, and vast conurbations of megacities and their peripheries will exert ever greater influence. Okay, the post-war order that held since the middle of the 20th century is coming unstuck. Expect uncertainty and instability ahead. Nation states are making a comeback. The largest ones are busily expanding their global reach, even as they shore up their territorial and digital borders. As the onslaught of reactionary politics around the world shows, there are no guarantees that these vast territorial dominions and their satellites will become more liberal or democratic. Instead, relentless climate change, migration, terrorism, inequality, and rapid technological change are going to ratchet up anxiety, insecurity, and it's already painfully apparent populism and authoritarianism. While showing cracks, the 4th century reign of the nation state will endure for some decades. So here you have the World Economic Forum. Okay, this is one of these globalist, we are the world, let's get everybody on one page. They've alluded to, oh, the digital dollar will be, this is why the digital dollar would be so great, amongst tons of other things. Okay. And this is them saying right in 2016, the United States is no longer going to be this powerhouse. You're going to have these other competing nations. You're going to see this ramping up of anxiety. You're going to see this ramping up of discord, confrontation, and all of these other things that are happening. And now we're starting to slowly see these things culminating right before our eyes. And so when you have news agencies or news personalities going against the fray to say, hey, there's a little bit more to this story. There's a little bit more going on. There's a little bit more than a big country invaded a little country, and that's wrong. You know what I mean? And, very few people are going to the full extent of, from what I've seen, just full on taking up for Russia. And I haven't seen anybody adding Russian flags to their Twitter bios. Okay. So I don't think it's to that extent, but a lot of people are realizing that in a lot of ways, maybe we are being manipulated and dragged into a, incoming even more chaos. And with possibly the looming of, if not the crashing of the US dollar, absolutely possibly looking at competition in the future, regardless of, the faults of America, the hardships that some people rightfully endure here, in a lot of ways, it's a lot of things, regardless of how you try to pretend otherwise, the things that we just haven't had to deal with, at least in my lifetime. Okay. I don't know what it feels like for another country to occupy or invade our country. I don't know what that feels like. I don't know what the American dollar feels like to totally crash out. I don't know what it feels like for the American dollar to even have to really compete with another dollar. And in some ways, we've been privileged in that regard and not had to feel, the weight of that. But is that time slowly coming to an end? Possibly within the next few years, it could be happening, right? And there have already been people that have questioned, okay, Joe Biden's connection to Ukraine, questioned Joe Biden's connection to China and things like this. And if some of these things are purposefully being done. And so, I just think it's really interesting to note. And at this time, we have to pay attention to what's going on. A lot of people are already, just imagine coming off the back of the COVID lockdowns, feeling with financial ruin and running right into a hike of gas prices, crazy inflation, grocery prices. And some people are suggesting that this is not even the peak. This is not even the peak. And so if you haven't prepared for this, and I've been somewhat talking about these things and hinting at these things and saying, hey, make sure you're stocking up on your groceries. We don't really know what's exactly coming down the pipeline. We can theorize and we can kind of put some of these pieces of the puzzle together, but even some of us that have somewhat been preparing, I don't think we would have hoped it to get this bad, especially so quickly. And so, how we go about this, it's room for concern. It's room for concern. Mike the Dad Crosby says, support and sub to anyone willing to step back and think things through. Love that. You are looking deeper, Rhonda. Thank you, Mike, for the super chat. Thank you so much. And so these are things to pay attention to. And now all the people that have, made snide or snarky remarks in past years about the US crashing, the US falling, and it's time for the US to fall, I just don't know what some of these people are going to do when things get really, really real, okay? If and when your dollar becomes worth nothing, are you going to have real hard assets? Are you going to have, food and water for preparation that can last you until at least some of this blows over? Do you have things to barter if and when the dollar actually crashes? Now, that may or may not happen, but I think the more absolute immediate thing that could happen is there absolutely, by what I'm seeing, is there going to be competitive from what we're seeing that's going to possibly be happening here with Russia and China. And we see how China is also working and moving through Africa and things like that, and possibly building a network to absolutely have some type of competing currency. Okay, China, Russia, possibly India. Okay, these are also a lot of places with a lot of people, a lot of residents. And so these connections, the stronger they get, the bigger they get, are not going to be something to play with. And if you know anything about China, okay, while we have been over here talking about gender studies, this and everything else under the sun, China has been strengthening their military. China has been putting their young boys on a more masculine path. China has been strengthening, their imports and exports. I mean, it's been a lot. It's been a lot. And so, people can continue to ignore it and pretend like it's not happening, but it is. It is. And that's just the truth of the matter. And so going forward, as we're going to talk about tonight, when you have people that question these narratives, put two and two together, make these connections that are not favorable to the mainstream media, to the tech oligarchs, to the politicians and their personal agendas, then you have people being name called, attempted to being ousted. Now it's going as far as saying that there should be a federal investigation of people like Tulsi Gabbard and things like that. And so that's what we're going to talk about now. And it's so, maybe it's just a timing. Maybe this is just in the air right now. Or, maybe I'm not sure what it is, but I was literally just talking to a friend the other day. And I was saying how everything has become so polarizing and so political, but it's such an odd space when you feel like you've almost been pushed out and ostracized and can't even speak on your own behalf without people labeling you something else. Okay. And so the mainstream media has been allowed to run with these narratives. Tech agencies have been able to censor so much to the point where if there's even an inkling of you going outside what they're saying, you are a problem. You are a Russian agent. You are a Russian asset. Okay. Amongst every other phobia, ism that they can call you. And it's become completely absurd. I'm talking about absolutely absurd, to the point where you have so many people feeling like they're being left behind or becoming politically homeless because we're being forced to fit into these boxes that no longer make sense or even ascribe to their original definitions and meanings. And so it's become absolutely 100% absurd. And so that's what we're going to talk about now, starting with this is a Bill Maher clip that recently went viral.
But when you say woke, it's become, and I make fun of it too, because it's become an eye roll in many ways. If woke, I assume at a certain moment, and it wasn't that long ago before we didn't have the term. I only heard it, I don't know what it was, 3-4 years ago, 5 years ago at most, when we heard the term woke, and it was like alert to injustice. I'm like, okay, I'm down with that. I always have been. I hope people still understand that about me. But yes, it became sort of a byword for a lot of this goofy stuff. That's what I'm always railing against. That's why, like, they play me on Fox News now.
Yeah, I mean, how do you feel about that? Because you went from the guy who was...
I feel... Look, I haven't changed at all. My politics hasn't changed. They've changed. People say to me sometimes, have you changed? No. It's that 5 years ago, no one was talking about defunding the police. I never heard that phrase 5 years ago. That's not me changing. That's things changing. I'm reacting to it, as I've always been. Letting 3-year-olds decide what gender they are. This wasn't something 5 years ago. Free speech, used to be a left-wing thing that we were proud and owned, and now that seems to be under attack. So again, I think I've stayed the same.
So, okay. So y'all hear that, right? So first of all, let's start by the fact that the word woke was completely co-opted and appropriated by the media and white liberals. Okay. So here you have Bill Maher saying, oh, I just heard this maybe about 4 years ago, right? I mean, that would be understandable. If you are a part of the Black community, that is a word that has been used for I don't even know, the longest time. And it used to be a respectable word until it was hijacked. It originally meant people that were conscious and aware, people that were paying attention, okay? And at some point that became an absolute joke to basically mean that everything's a problem. You support, just some of the most newest, whatever they're calling progressive these days, any or everything, you just go along with it, whatever the media is telling you to do. At some point it became that. They've hijacked the word so much until where they've almost shamed people for being aware or being willing to question things. And unfortunately, that should have never happened in the first place, because now it's created a system for people to basically not only once again throw people in a box, throw people under these labels and try to bully people by way of these labels, but it's almost shamed people for asking questions, right? For not going along to get along, for not submitting immediately to the mainstream narrative. And so let's start with that fact, how that was completely co-opted to make fun of people. It's the same exact thing that they did with conspiracy theorists, right? I think if I remember correctly, and y'all let me know in the chat, but it was actually like the CIA or some agency that coined that term to make you think that anybody that would, how dare you have the balls, the nerves to question us, right? And so we're going to throw this label on you that will basically make people throw their hands up. Oh, I can't touch that because I can't be willing to theorize about people may be conspiring against me. The federal government may actually be may have conspiracies against me. They may be conspiring against me, but I absolutely cannot theorize based on the actual evidence and things that I am seeing with my own two eyes, the things that the media is directly telling me, the things that the politicians are saying out of their own freaking mouths, the things that look at the World Economic Forum. I'm sorry, I'm losing some of my words because I'm getting so flustered about this. Look at the article that we just went over, right? A few years ago, if you probably would have said this, the US is no longer going to be this global power, and you're going to have these things happening to the US dollar, and there's going to be anxiety, and you're going to have these other nations rising up and this and that. People would have looked at it like, oh, that's just a conspiracy theory. Literally, it was probably about 2 years ago where I read a World Economic Forum article about the social credit system and the digital dollar. People will literally say, even though I can pull up worldeconomicforum.org, meaning directly to their organization, okay? And this is a global organization saying, hey, this is basically why the digital dollar and the social credit system would be great for you and you should consider it. And then the United States this year, literally the Biden administration comes out and says, not only are we going to try to see what y'all over here doing with this whole crypto dollar thing, because we're not really feeling this, and we're going to now blame it on Russia, the fact that we really want to be more authoritative with how you guys are not under our control with this type of currency, okay? But we need to now start thinking about our own digital dollar, because we think it would be the thing to do. And if you would have said this a few years ago, people would have wrote you off and swore up and down, oh, you're just some type of, you're just some type of conspiracy theorist. And so that's why it's important to, first of all, when I hear people calling somebody names, immediately I'm the type of person, my ears are going to perk up, because what are they saying that you don't want me to hear? What are they saying that you feel like you just want me to write them off and you want it to be at your behest? You don't want me to make that decision. You want to, that's a Russian agent, Russian propaganda. Don't listen to that conspiracy theory. Don't look that way. No. Censorship. Delete. And what these people are doing, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, this is related to, it's called a Barbara Streisand effect, and y'all let me know if that's what it is in the chat. But you're doing all this, don't look this way, don't do that, don't pay attention to this, look the other way, don't pay attention to the man behind the curtain. And it's pushing people to these other platforms. Literally pushing people into the hands of the Joe Rogans, into the hands of the Russell Brand, because people are looking for a competing message that they feel like is more genuine, more honest, more willing to break things down and investigate, which we oftentimes don't see as much in journalism now. They just, this is my opinion, this is this, that, and the other. Okay? When I pull up this, article, this current article talking about, oh, well, we don't really want to deal as much with the US dollar. At Saudi Arabia, we want to deal directly with China and do this competing thing over here. And I said, that makes me think about this thing that they were talking about in 2016. Are you going to get that from your mainstream media? Most likely not. So there you have Bill Maher, talking about if y'all don't have dictionaries, we used to have encyclopedias when I was growing up. Make sure you are screenshotting definitions. Make sure you buy older dictionaries, or even get you a current one and try to keep it for years, right? But how these words are even changing. These people that we're going to talk about tonight are all on the left, not even as just defined by them, but even their positions on things like green energy, abortion, taxes, and things like that. But now you have your mainstream media who are going to accuse people of now anybody that questions, if you have an inkling of common sense, if you toe the line, put a pinky toe across the line, okay, now you're right wing. So Bill Maher goes on to say, I haven't changed. They changed. They changed. Liberals used to stand up for free speech. That's no longer happening. These are the people that are directly calling for people to be censored. I talked about this a while ago when it was happening with Donald Trump. I was saying that this is one of the worst things they could do, very similar to what they're now doing with Russia, what they did with 9/11. They'll pick one event, they'll pick one person and start there, but then it's a growing thing. And then it starts to become a snowball and starts to become something that you can't undo. But this is the Oxford Dictionary of English Etymology. And this talks about the definition of liberal. To the arts considered worthy of a free man, right? Free in bestowing, unrestrained, free from prejudice of political opinion. Okay, it goes on to compare to words like liberty, liberate, liberation. And you have Bill Maher saying how you calling yourself a liberal and you're literally against free speech. Goes on to talk about the things with gender. 5 years ago, this would have totally not be a thing. And now you have people being forced into ideologies and concepts that they don't agree with, that they absolutely just don't agree with, right? And now you'll have, a mainstream media. It's like, well, if you don't fall in line with this, you're homophobic, you're racist, you're a Russian asset. How does this make sense? And how is this healthy, for a country? How is this healthy for conversation and communication? How is this healthy for working across the aisle when every single time somebody says something that you don't agree with, you try to shut them up, you try to shame them, you try to demonize them, you try to censor them. And it's actually sad in some regards when a person like Bill Maher now has to go talk to freaking Ben Shapiro, who if you actually listen, and I don't mean listen to a through a freaking third person or somebody commentating on who these people are supposed to be to you, right? But if you listen to their actual positions on politics, are practically diametrically opposed, but they're like, look, in some regards, on some of these things, gender, free speech, we agree with, or at the very least, on a free speech, used to be a main tenet, a heavy component of actually calling yourself a liberal. But words no longer have meanings. Words no longer have meanings, okay? And so then we have Russell Brand that goes viral also here recently.
New narratives, new stories, and new understanding. In a minute, we're going to be talking about Justin Trudeau, your friend and mine, who says that the rise of authoritarianism has led to a slippage in democratic values. He says this without any hint of irony after the authoritarianism in Canada used against truckers, protesters, bank accounts, fundraising sites. It's unbelievable. If you're in the UK or if you're not and you fancy a trip here, I'm on tour at the moment in places like...
So that kind of gives you, and I'm not going to play the whole video, right? But, you know, Russell Brand basically goes to say, like, you got Justin Trudeau, okay, being trotted out and sitting here saying, oh, you know, Russia is being so authoritarian and Russia, this is not democratic and all of these other things. But like, look at the, how the saying go, look at the kettle calling the pot black or something. Look at the, yeah, y'all know what I'm talking about. Okay. But listen, you know, he goes on to talk about this and it's like, do you think that was democracy? Like if we're going to use words and words have definitions, what was democratic, right? Democratic means basically you having the large group of people decide, usually by vote. I don't remember voting on COVID lockdowns. I don't believe Canada voted on lockdowns. I don't believe that Canada said the majority of the people want this, and so this is what we're doing. By definition, by literal definition, that was not democratic. And so Russell Brand goes on to say, like, yo, you talking about democracy, freedom, this and that. And who are you to really be talking? And somehow, because once again, people don't know the actual definitions to words, for some reason, they find that offensive. But by all intents and purposes, Russell Brand is absolutely telling the truth. Now, whether you think, oh, well, you shouldn't compare Russia to COVID lockdowns. Now, that may be a different argument, but if we're literally talking about the words democracy in a democratic process and things like freedom, and Justin Trudeau goes on to completely not even practically ignore the wishes of the truckers convoy, but goes on to absolutely smear these people as Nazis and tells the rest of the, not even just the country, but the world, to completely ignore these people because, oh, they're just racist Nazis. And this specific concern that they have absolutely does not matter. Do not pay attention to it, because every single one of these thousands and thousands and thousands, possibly hundreds of thousands of people are Nazis. Ironically, you don't even mention the Nazism in Ukraine. You don't tell people not to take up for Ukraine because of the Nazism in Ukraine. You don't ascribe a few people in an entire country this whole thing because of those few people, but you were willing to do that to the truckers convoy. So it's absolutely right for somebody to say, hey, like, keep a little consistency here. So you will have people like the Independent, Independent UK. How did Russell Brand go from stand-up stardom to peddling YouTube conspiracy theories, right? Because they have to automatically, they absolutely can't say, this is what Russell Brand said, and these are the reasons why we don't agree with it. They can't do that, because why would they do that? Why would they let you think for yourself and read their article and make an assessment? That's too much. That's too much like right. So before you can even read the article, they must put the narrative in your mind already. Before you even know what's going on, before you know what this is about, that this man is a conspiracy theorist. So already in your head, you have labeled him. So this is according to Independent. With a series of alarmist videos tackling issues like COVID and the Russian-Ukrainian war, the comedian has reinvented himself as a popular online current affairs guru. But while his latest venture offers a mixed bag of healthy skepticism and poorly sourced controversy mongering, it's worth asking what exactly he stands to gain. So not what the mainstream media stands to gain by whipping out some new narrative every 3 weeks. Not what the mainstream media gains by completely every chance they get fear mongering and controversy mongering, right? You're worried about Russell Brand, who is on his own platform on YouTube. Now, keep in mind, Russell Brand has 5.1 million followers. When did Russell Brand decide comedy wasn't enough for him? See, right there, even that's like shut up and dribble type energy. Like, you're an entertainer. If we haven't scripted this speech for you, you absolutely don't deserve to speak. You don't have the human right to speak. And that's a part of why I have always said, unless an entertainer is absolutely committed to being their own person, going outside of the mainstream media platforms and narratives, doing their own thing, not being beholden to like some type of overseer or some type of level of contract, is the only time that you could possibly believe them to be somewhat genuine, okay? When you have the type of people that have moved beyond that, they're not really beholden to that. They're not trying to constantly get in the good favor of, the blue checks, the politicians and things like that. Specifically people that have built their own platforms and these mega platforms. You have like your Joe Rogans, your Russell Brands, your Kanye West, people who now feel like they can say and do whatever, because not only do they have a more direct access to their fans, as you see a lot more people being willing to, like, I'm right here on my phone, I'm speaking directly to you. I don't have to go through these other agencies. I don't have to get on a news media platform to talk to you. And that's why these news media agencies are so upset. They're so upset because they want to be able to filter every single piece of information that ever comes to you. They want to be the middleman. They want to control the airwaves. They don't want this level of autonomy and freedom. They don't want these people to be able to talk directly to you. And they love entertainers. They love them. They faint over them when they just repeat the narrative, when they say exactly what they want, when they do exactly what they want. But then the moment you have a Russell Brand who goes outside of that narrative, comedy wasn't enough for him. Like, but y'all completely okay with the Cardi B's coming out and talking about politics, and plenty of other people that I can name, as long as it goes, like I said, with that mainstream narrative. For most of his time in a public eye, the Essex-born funny man has been better known for his offstage antics than any particulars of his comic craft. There was a short-lived marriage to Carrie Patty, his bullying of Andrew Sachs over voicemail, So this goes on to talk about this. It is in this last capacity that Brand operates his self-titled YouTube channel, publishing daily videos to 5.3 million followers and counting. These videos have prompted some to accuse Brand of peddling conspiracy theories, and it's easy to see why. Hot business issues such as COVID vaccines and the Russian invasion of Ukraine have countless clips devoted to them. Usually they're framed with some sort of contrarian take or calling out hypocrisy in the mainstream media. They frequently have alarmist titles hinting at a vague, world-altering conspiracy. A few recent examples: World War III. So this is why we want Russia war. So they do run the world. I've been warned not to talk about this. They often open with Brand addressing viewers as awakening wonders, awakening being his new age inflicted buzzwords of choice. Then goes on to talk about the way he looks with his beard, his long hair, loose fitting, wide neck shirts, right? His presentation, Matrix-like. He comes on and tells you, here's the real truth, right? And it just goes on to call it an insufferable stick. And it goes on to talk about, how, why would he call Justin Trudeau? Why would he call it authoritarianism? And he shouldn't be comparing that to what's going on in Russia. And like I said, if it's not their narrative, they can't stand it. They go on to compare him to Joe Rogan. But one thing that these people are not getting, you got all these problems with people. You keep saying, oh, they're conspiracies. Oh, they're giving you misinformation. Instead of questioning why these people's platforms are steadily growing, why more people are being drawn to them. Instead of addressing this directly, they want to continue to pretend that it's not happening. You have so many people out here that are genuinely feeling betrayed by the media. You have genuine people who are tired. These people are being tired that because of simply questioning things, because of simply viewing the world a different way, being called transphobic, homophobic, being told for the last 2 years that they simply want a haircut or they're grandma killers, okay? You have people that are getting tired of this, ignore the Nazis in Ukraine, but that's all the thousands of people trucker convoy is about in Canada. You have people that are getting tired of these labels, these nonsensical labels, being called conspiracy theorists because we say, hey, what's up with this Pfizer 9 pages worth of adverse effects? And why is the media not talking more about this and highlighting this? Why is the media coming out and telling us that Justin Bieber's wife has a heart inflammation and why you should expect that more amongst your 20-year-old and 30-year-old friends, because it's actually kind of normal to have a stroke at 20 and 30. People are tired of the absolute nonsense and a constant labeling and the attempts at bullying. People are tired of when I'm literally telling you my politics is this, but you're saying I'm that. If we are living in an era where you want to allow people to pick their own pronouns, you definitely can't tell me what my politics are. It makes no sense. It's no level of consistency. The hypocrisy is glaring and nauseating, and people are getting tired of it. And it's a reason that CNN's viewership is draining, is going down, is declining. It's a reason that people are leaving mainstream media networks to look for these other platforms. It's a reason that people are tapping out. It's a reason that people are frustrated. And if you are one of those people, you are not alone. It's happening. It's happening. But the unfortunate part about is they're continually trying to censor it is happening. They're trying to make you think it's something wrong with you for, what's this Russell Brand guy talking about? Oh, don't listen to that. He's a conspiracy theorist. You should absolutely not listen to that. That just doesn't make sense. And so I have found that if you talk to actual people in real life and not just the polarizing aspects of the social medias that have been amped up by the tech oligarchs, you will maybe find that a lot of more people agree with some of these things that are being said. And one thing that Democrats, particularly the Biden administration, is going to have to deal with, and I think they know they have to deal with, is particularly white Democrats that are feeling more and more like this, that they're not going to be ignored. These people are a huge part of their base, and they've always thrown Black people under the bus for the rest of their base. So let's just start there, okay? So you can try to pretend like what the Bill Mahers and, the Russell Brands and the Tulsi Gabbards, what they're not saying doesn't matter. But when you look at some of the things that, the Joe Biden administration and some of the things that they're trying to literally actively and quickly change before midterms, easing up on the lockdowns, more money for police. Okay, these are things that are actively happening because you had a lot of their base. They're not going to be loud about it, but they know that they have things to be worried about for midterms. They know it. And that's why you slowly see some of these things changing. A lot of those people that were down with the defund the police movement, and I've talked, a lot about this previously. A lot of those people were these people that come and gentrify, okay, the Brooklyns and the Oaklands and all of these other places, they were all down with the movements, okay? But now, when they see some of these stores being looted, when they see crime rising exponentially because of the things that we've seen over the last 2 years, when you see inflation and people are getting desperate, you will be crazy. You will be crazy to think that people are going to continue to be down with hashtags as their neighborhoods, as they're feeling these things. Okay. And it's not even just that. That was wildly unpopular with other than, more very just like young college students, super duper more radical segments of people. But when you actually talk to people in real life, more people would tell you that they are actually for reform. Okay, not like defunding, not like abolishing. If you remember recently, and I say defund because even that word, and people gonna say, you obviously don't know what defunding the police means. As I've said in previous videos, that wording has been very negative. It's been very negative, and that movement has hurt this administration in a lot of ways. And if you think it haven't, you better think again, because you need to go look at the actual data and the numbers for how much more money they have invested in, shifted to local policing and invested in federal policing. Okay, the Capitol Police. And so they know that. And there was even a petition that I covered. If you had Colin Kaepernick, who literally has 24/7 security, lives in the nicest, plushest places, okay, lives behind gated communities, you literally have him going on with the abolish the police movement, while you had a petition that was circling with thousands and thousands of mostly Black women, but not just Black women, saying we don't want to be the face of abolish the police. Like, stop. Like, first of all, you're not a Black woman. Second of all, you don't deal with what the average Black woman deals with. And when y'all are done with the politics, we have to deal with the everyday ramifications of these neighborhoods and communities, not you, when you're finished using us for your cover image. And so there were I can't even remember how many. I don't want to guess, but it was a couple, like tens of thousands of signatures. And what did Colin Kaepernick do? Of course, he completely ignored it, because they want to control that narrative. They want to try to tell you, this is how Black people think, this is how Black people feel, without directly talking to, everyday people in I should say, at least a holistic way, a holistic approach, right? You still very much so have people that have safety concerns, particularly now with the downward spiral we've seen after these COVID lockdowns and with rising inflation. And so people can try to pretend it's not happening. People can try to ignore it. But like I said, when you see the money that's being allocated to the police, I believe even more so than during the Trump administration, it's not something that can be ignored. And people can say whatever they want out of their mouth, but what's on paper, what's inked on paper, is going to be a totally different thing. And so, even someone that is absolutely on board for gun rights, absolutely on board for communities having more autonomy and being able to, protect themselves. I also know that you have a lot of people that are not prepared nor ready for that, and in some ways have also been manipulated by the media to feel like, oh well, the police will just rush in and save you, or the police has this duty to you. And we've talked about that just goes on into a whole different conversation. And a lot of times that's just not the case. In some of these areas, on average, with police even taking about 8 to 15 minutes to get to your location. We talked about this story a couple of weeks ago where this woman, I believe she was in Georgia, goes to shoot her gun in the air because in her heart she wants to protect her 4 children from this intruder that was walking into her yard. But after that, the police is like, you can't do that. You can't do that. That's unlawful. And so they try to get her to hand over her gun. And she's like, I don't feel comfortable doing that, because the whole reason I'm doing this in the first place is because y'all take too long to show up. Y'all take too long to show up. Somebody is here. People have been breaking in houses, breaking in cars. I have these concerns. I wanted to protect myself. And unfortunately for her, and unbeknownst to her, she totally went about it the wrong way. And if you don't follow me over at Instagram, you should, Rhonda_Mary, because I talk a lot about, some of these 2A gun handling myths, things you could do better to keep yourself out of situations like this. But it's a lot happening, okay? I saw a video today where you had a group of Asian people who are like lined up in New York. This is in New York City. I'm talking about this had to be like over 100 people, mostly women, lined up to get pepper spray. And I didn't even know this. I just learned this today. But apparently, pepper spray is illegal to get in New York City unless you get it directly from a firearms dealer or a pharmacy. And so that's why the line was so long, people having these safety concerns. And yeah, when I see a video, and I'm literally going to New York soon, and that's another story. But when I see a video of somebody walking off the street with a knife into, I believe, a museum and just stabbing for no apparent reason, stabbing like 2 or 3 women at the front desk, and all the man in there can do is like throw books or like a computer at them. You are leaving people to feel like victims. And it's so unfortunate. And people are going to adapt. It's innate. It's innate to want to protect yourself. It's innate to want to live. Right? And so people are going to adapt. People are going to try to defend themselves. And what people need to realize is that mostly everything we're seeing right now, it's mostly a combination of failed policy and overreaching government. The whole COVID lockdowns just you already had people trying to bounce back, trying to open their businesses back up, trying to get business back booming. And now we're hit over the head with inflation. And it's not as simple as gas prices, because gas prices are going to literally affect every other price. Okay? Transports are a huge part of our fabric. And so you're going to see the price of that go up. Every single thing that has to be transported to any store for you to be able to walk in and buy, now the prices are affected by the gas prices. How much it takes to transport your orange from Florida to Wisconsin. Mike said, allies stand with you until it doesn't serve their purpose anymore. I want friends, not allies. As a Toy Story says, you got a friend in me. Thank you for the super chat. I've always said that whole like, I'm your ally thing was like a weird concept to me. In a lot of ways, maybe this is not the case for everybody, but mostly what I've seen in my personal experience, along with how I have seen people use that in mainstream media, is very similar to what Mike said. It's like, I'm cool with you, I'm down with you, as long as it fits my interest. As long as it fits my interest. And this person comes to mind, Susan B. Anthony. And why she comes to mind is I specifically talked about her during Jubilee, when I went on Jubilee, and I think they ended up editing this part out when they asked us about, white feminism. Does white feminism overshadow Black feminism or something like this? And I talked about how you would have people like Susan B. Anthony, who, when it was beneficial to them, when it was beneficial to her, she has this particular story. I think it was it Frederick Douglass? She has a particular story, I think, she was creating these allyships with Black activists to supposedly, work on behalf of Black rights, right? But the moment she thought that they interfered with women's rights, she was like, that whole Black thing, I was just doing that because, it was like the thing to do at the time, and I kind of wanted to help them, but they definitely not as important as this over here, and a lot of people get that energy you've seen people switch from these BLM flags to now. I saw somebody tweet this today. They said their neighbor's BLM flag has now turned into a Ukraine flag and things like this. And people are so focused on being an ally to the cause at the time, as opposed to just being good, freaking decent people. And when you have a standard, standards are consistent. There is no, you don't have to bob and weave to be down with the hip thing now. And now, now when it's like, I thought this was a cool thing to do, but when it's affecting me, I'm really going to let it be known that like, I wasn't really down with that because whatever the reason may be, when it no longer works in your favor. And it's like, just be a good person. Just stand for human rights for all. Just stand for constitutional rights for all. Like, you know what I mean? I feel like that should be a consistent behavior. And if it was a consistent behavior, we wouldn't have a lot of problems that we do in this country right now. Like Bill Maher said, freedom of speech. Liberals, like that was like our thing. Like that was us. And now, like, what are we doing here? You have us cheering on censorship. When has that become a thing? But if you literally stood for free speech, if you actually cared about free speech, genuinely cared about free speech, not only do you have the mental fortitude to know how that could impact us going forward in the future, and you know how if you don't support it, it can later be used against you, but it would just be a consistent, like, this is what I stand for, these are my principles, this is my standard. And so, yes, everything has become backwards. Left is right, right is left, up is down, down is up. And when you simply say that, people try to make you think like you're the problem. There's something wrong with you. And so I think we're going to see more of this ramp up. We recently saw, even with the whole situation with Kyrie Irving, we recently saw Stephen A. Smith and it was one other person, Stephen A. Smith and Kevin Durant, right? Come out, and now it's like, oh, this doesn't make sense. And for some reason, it almost feels as if the day ones, the like, this is what it is, this is where I stand, this is my position. In some way, it almost feels like we have to bear the cross when some of these things are more unpopular, people not as comfortable saying them. Like, we have to bear that cross until it's almost like it becomes okay to say. Or it becomes almost completely unbearable and insufferable. And even some of the most leftist people are like, I can't even take this anymore. This is just ridiculous at this point. And so that's when you have the Bill Mahers and the Russell Brands and the Joe Rogans and the Tulsi Gabbards and the Kanye West and the Kevin Durants, and even Stephen A. saying, like, the COVID stuff, the rules for New York City not making sense. Even some of the stuff Trevor Noah has been saying lately. It's like, but unfortunately, some of us have to say these things first until it's acceptable again. It's cool again. We've kind of like watered down the darts and the arrows, blazing this path for other people to finally, I guess, get a little common sense, be willing to stand up for themselves, be willing to speak out, or either just getting tired of it. Absolutely just tired of it. So, but anyway. that is my spiel for tonight. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for everyone who super chatted. Thank you for supporting my channel. Please be sure to give this video a thumbs up and help by sharing this video. Make sure you're following me on Instagram. I've been like posting there more lately. Rhonda_Mary. I also have my backup page, RhondaMary Vids. And so, you know, let's see what happens with the dollar. Let's see what happens with the inflation. Some of us that felt that this was coming, you know, we are, I guess, prayers up for others, because I can just imagine. I don't think it's just easy for anybody. They even make jokes about Tom Brady going back to work after seeing the inflation. So I don't just think it's just super easy, smooth sailing for anybody, but we absolutely know it's going to always be harder and hardest hit on, you know, your middle income families and your poor families. And it's just so unfortunate, man. It's so unfortunate that, you know, in some ways we are being almost like held hostage, or, you know, affected by decisions that aren't even directly like our own. And so I hope at some point we're getting at a peak with this inflation. But if not, stock up, you know, looking into other assets, like hard assets, you know, things you may be able to barter at some point. Like basically just getting your affairs in order. You know, that'll somewhat help you be able to at least shield this a little bit. But yeah, you know, right now at this point, in some ways we can only speculate and hope for the best. But all right, y'all, thank y'all for watching. Y'all have a good night and see you next Tuesday.